Well, this is the only way you get on time for lunch. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eli Bier. I grew up in Jerusalem, Israel. I was actually born and raised in Israel, in Jerusalem. By the age of 6 years old, I experienced a terrible experience that, unfortunately, I don't want anyone to experience. I saw the first bomb attack on a bus ever in Israel, the number 12 bus. I was a young kid, and I remember seeing the bus on fire, but more than everything, I remember an old man laying on the floor and yelling for help. And I was frightened, I was scared, and I saw this man yelling and screaming for someone to help him just get up. I ran away and I left him on the floor. Couldn't do anything. I grew up, my dream was to save someone's life. So the time I was 15 in Israel, you could start volunteering in an ambulance. I went to learn how to save people's lives. I became an EMT and I went to volunteer in an ambulance in Jerusalem. And my hope was that the first week I join an ambulance, I will save someone's life. Well, I did a great shift on the ambulance for 8 hours. We helped many people. We had a couple of emergencies and one incident where a person had a cardiac arrest. When we got there, we were doing CPR, and unfortunately, we couldn't save him. Came back home, my parents were waiting up for me. It was almost midnight, and they say, "Nu, did you save anyone today?" I said, "No, we didn't save anyone. We tried," or whatever. A week later, the same thing again, over and over. And unfortunately, every single time we had a real emergency of someone not breathing and no pulse, we were not able to save them. Even so, if you learn how to save someone's life, you do CPR properly, you could save them. But I realized it takes us precious time to get to these people. About a year and a half after volunteering in this ambulance, and I loved it. It was a great feeling. We did a lot of great things, a lot of good mitzvahs. But we had an incident of a 7-year-old boy who choked from a hot dog. And we got there. We were the only ambulance available. It took us 21 minutes to get to him in the other side of Jerusalem. Going through the traffic and everything going on on the roads just to get there, the geography in Jerusalem, one side to the other side, we found this boy on the floor not breathing, completely blue, and no one did anything to help him because people were just crying and screaming and waiting for the ambulance. And when we ran up the stairs, we knew that the chances of saving this boy is almost zero. And we started working on this young boy, and a doctor who lived 2 blocks away came by, and he said, he saw the ambulance parked, and he ran upstairs, and he said, "I could help," and he tried helping, and he said, "Nothing to do. Just bring a sheet to cover this boy. We can't help him." That moment, it was the worst moment of my life. I was 16 and a half years old. I saw a 7-year-old boy on the floor who choked, and I realized this boy could have been saved. He didn't die from cancer or anything that you can't find a cure for. He died from something simple that every one of us here could do and save him. And a doctor lived 2 blocks away from him, but no one even thought of calling him because the ambulance job is to save someone's life. The doctor is sitting at home, doesn't know anything about it. So that moment I decided to start this organization with my friends, 15 of my friends in Jerusalem, to start responding to emergencies way before the ambulance arrives. Didn't make sense to me that the ambulance should be the first one saving people. Well, I was 16 and a half years old with a lot of motivation, and I went over, we got together, all my friends, and I went over to the ambulance organization in Yerushalayim, Magen David Adom. I said, "Let's start this first response organization, and while you're on the way, we'll be there first and save the people's life." Well, I was very young, they didn't take me too serious, and they didn't want to cooperate. So I was stuck. What do I do now? I have these people who want to help, but we don't know any information. If someone is in trouble, how would we know about this? So I decided to use the best invention Israel ever invented, called chutzpah. And we went ahead and we bought these scanners, these police scanners, and we actually started tapping into their emergencies. And we knew what to do if someone's in trouble. We just needed to know the address. So we would listen in. 2 days after we bought these scanners, I hear of a call around the block where it was, my father's bookstore in Beit Vagan in Jerusalem, and a person was hit by a car, and I ran there by foot. I got there within 30 seconds. He was on the floor, bleeding terribly from his neck. I knew I had to stop his bleeding, but I had no medical equipment on me. I took my yarmulke off my head, I folded it, and I stopped his bleeding that way, just pushing it in. They took him to the hospital a few minutes, like 20 minutes later, the ambulance arrived, they took him to the hospital. 2 days later, he woke up. His child called me and said, "You're Eli Beer?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You treated my father 2 days ago, and he woke up in the hospital. He wants to thank you for saving his life." I started crying. This was like the best thing. Like, literally, I couldn't get any better news than this news. And I ran to the hospital in Jerusalem, the Hadassah Hospital, and I found the person on the bed, and he gave me a hug. And when he gave me a hug, I saw he had a number on his hand. That moment changed my life forever. And I knew this is what I want to do. And we started with 15 volunteers, and I said to myself, I made a calculation. If we want to get there in a response time of 90 seconds, we want to change history for generations. If you think about it, when someone was sick or not breathing, they would call a doctor over to their home. Until a doctor comes, sometimes days or hours, people will not survive. And then the ambulance is a new generation. About 100 years ago, they started the ambulance services. If someone's not feeling well, you call an ambulance, and they come to you. Instead of you calling the doctor and running to him, the ambulance comes to you. That takes a lot of time, too. We're going to change history, and we're going to make a 90-second response time. People said, "How are you going to do this?" Well, if you get enough people, you get a 90-second response time. More people that know what's going on and have the knowledge of how to save people, you would actually lower response time. So when we started this, we started between the Jewish communities in Jerusalem and mostly Orthodox, and then it started going out to the non-Orthodox communities, and it was amazing because we also connected people from all different diversities who don't usually talk to each other. What happened was, years after, we did amazingly, we were very successful. We started saving lives every single day of people who otherwise would not survive. One day, this guy, Muhammad Asli, comes over to me together with Murad Aliyan, and he says, "My father collapsed at home in Abu Tor, East Jerusalem. It took 52 minutes for an ambulance to arrive. My father was a young man. 55 minutes it took the ambulance to arrive, and my father was 52, and my father died just waiting for an ambulance." Now, you have to understand, these little villages, it's very hard to find addresses, and security-wise, they have to wait for police escort. So it took a long time. He said, "My father could have been saved if Hatzalah would have been existing in my community." So I was thinking of Arabs. I never had Arabs in Hatzalah, but I said, when I started this 90-second response time, I wanted to have volunteers save lives of people, not of Jews, any people. And I said to Muhammad, "Let's go ahead and do this." And we started 25 volunteers, join them into United Hatzalah. And that's when I realized this is how we're going to win the 90-second responses. Have every type of person living in Israel unite in this organization. And every time something happens, we will have an app. And this is where I came up with the idea about 11 years ago, to connect everyone with an app that today you all know about Uber and Get and other applications there. Create something that if something happens anywhere, the first 5 volunteers will hear about this based on their geography location closer to the patient. Then I said, let's get even things faster. We have these Jews, Muslims, Christians running around saving people's lives. We can't get there fast enough with our own cars. Let's create this thing called Ambucycle. So I took this motorcycle and I outfitted it as an ambulance. This was the first time in the world anyone does something like this. People said to me, "Who's going to give you authorization?" I know we have a lot of government people in this room. So people said to me, "How are you going to get how's the government authorize this?" I said, "God forbid, let's not even tell them." I said, if we tell the government, I'm going to be 90 years old when we get the permits. And I think every government official, including Danny Danon, will agree with me. So we actually went ahead and we made this look so official, no one even thought it's not official. Well, we started saving lives much quicker because of these things. They could zoom in between the traffic, go on the sidewalks. You see these volunteers everywhere in Israel. We have 3,500 volunteers now, 600 of these. Well, I want to tell you something. This was my dream, and I never knew we were going to get to help over 2.5 million people, all as volunteers. Never charged even one patient for help. And this is spreading all around the world. This is not even in Israel alone. We have it in 20 different countries. This idea is spreading. We have it here in Jersey City. It's going to Newark. It's going to other places. It's going to Detroit. This idea is the best idea to save lives. So I just spent Shabbat, this last Shabbat, by Ambassador David Friedman and his wife, Tammy. And we were going ahead, and David was telling me, this is the best investment he ever did. So I told him I just met Alan Dershowitz, who's on our board. And Alan was telling me, Alan has a few of these ambucycles that he donated. And Alan said, if you think about it, if you ever want to fight BDS or the people who hate Israel, talk about United Hatzalah. How we unite every type of person in Israel, no matter what religion he comes from, to help each other save lives. This could happen only in Israel, literally. You see Hasidic Jews running on Shabbat, saving Muslims, and Muslims in Ramadan saving Jews with these ambucycles and their own private things. So I was telling David, the new ambassador, he says, this is what I'm going to talk about. He says, on the Senate, this is what I was talking about when they were questioning me about Israel, about my relationship with Israel and United Hatzalah. We have 600 of them, and whoever's going to be in Israel on the 26th of May, we're dedicating another 180 new ambucycles to Israel. This morning, we saved a 5.5-year-old boy choking in kindergarten from eating a candy because of a volunteer that jumped out of work and he responded, and he got there and he saved the life of a boy, a little boy, because of this ambucycle. Each ambucycle like this costs $36,000. Fully loaded with everything you have, but it responds to about 800 emergencies a year. So this is the right investment to do. Tell everyone about this. We have a booth outside. Love to welcome you all and see you in Israel in our dedication. Have your own ambucycle dedicated there. Thank you very much.